to set the ground rules just the same as last time, and then we will do the roll call, and then I'll mute. So the ground rules obviously are, if you've got any questions, so please enter them into the text box, and we will answer them either when I finish speaking, or I may stop and answer it immediately. Just bear in mind that when it is unmuted, that we can hear everything that's going on. So if you've got a lot of background noise, we can hear it. If your volume microphone's turned up quite loud, we get a lot of feedback on the line, which not only makes it difficult for us, but it also makes it difficult for yourselves because you can't hear what's being asked. So just please bear that in mind. So obviously tonight we're going to cover some topics around the portal, and we're also going to do the roll call. So you may need to turn your volume down on either your phone or on your computer if you're getting feedback as well, but please make sure that it's not turned up high because it will be giving feedback to us regardless of whether you're aware of it. So I'll just start with the roll call. So I've got Billie Jean, are you there?
Hello.
So just also, when you say hello, if you could just confirm which mask do you operate under, just for the benefit of everybody else on the call. I obviously, I'm pretty sure you're from Victoria off the top of my head.
Yeah, my master's Karen, but I work for James in Tasmania.
Great, thank you. So Duncan, are you there, Duncan? Duncan, have you gone?
Yes, yeah, I was muted, sorry. Yes, Duncan under Karen
no problem.
in Melbourne.
Right, thank you. Ian, welcome back. Yep, Kieran under Victoria. James McFarlane.
Yes, Wollongong, New South Wales.
Thank you. Narelle. Narelle, Kieran, Victoria, thank you. Mick Larney.
Yep, Tara, New South Wales. Go the Wallabies.
Thank you. Steve Binney.
Yes, Armidale Tamworth, New South Wales.
Thank you. Catherine.
Catherine Wollongabba, Queensland.
Thank you. Jodie. Yep, great. Thanks, Jodie from New South Wales. I've got a Sally W. Great, thank you, Gateway Queensland. Andrew Woodward.
Yep, Warrnambool, Victoria.
Thank you. John Crean.
Yep, Central Coast, New South Wales.
Great. Ben Brooks.
Yep, here from South Australia.
Thank you. Georgie.
Yep, Horsham, Victoria.
Thank you. And I think we've got Greg and is it Leon? Ken? You may not be able to hear, but I can see that you're on, so hopefully you can hear us. Have I missed anybody? Frank? Frank Jagger? If you can't hear me, can you chat? If you can hear me, but I'm not answering you, please use the chat box. Okay, so hopefully the last two, Greg and Leon and also Frank, can hear me. Great, Frank, I've got you there from Victoria, perfect. So hopefully we're just, the lucky last can hear me. So I'll just, everybody's gone quite quiet, which is really nice, but we experienced with the New Zealand one we ran earlier that even though it went quiet, we still needed to mute. I think we've just got Kerry come on the line. Kerry, are you there? Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to move. Okay, guys, so I'm just going to mute everybody. So everybody's muted. So tonight's session, as I said, thank you for joining us. Tonight's session is on the portal, and the topics to be covered are understanding the dashboard and why my pickup numbers don't look correct. Why does the portal not match what is showing on my FUD? And what reports to run to reconcile my stock and where I should be looking. So obviously we need to be logged into the portal. So let's log in. So I'm just going to be using the same user that I used last week. And you can see here that it comes in with the dashboard. Now obviously most of you should be well and truly familiar with the dashboard by now, but we do have a couple of newbies on this evening, which is great news, but it also is a good opportunity for you to refresh how the dashboard works. So as you can see here across the top, it's got the daily distributor summary. Along here it's got who's it for. Now if you operate subcontractors, if you simply click on the box, it would bring up the subcontractor's name, and instead you can view their sales history. Across on the right hand side you've got the cycle period that you're running it for, so it will automatically default to the current cycle that you're in. This particular franchisee works on a Tuesday as being the beginning of their cycle, so their week 1, day 1 is on a Tuesday. So you can see here that we're currently looking at the end of their week 2. If I wanted to look at a different period, I could simply click on the box, remembering that you have to click on the actual date, not the little calendar box beside. So if I click on the date and wanted to say look at last week's results, so not the week that I'm currently in, the cycle prior, I could simply click within any date and it would automatically change it to the end of the cycle for me. So it doesn't matter what day of the week that I pick during the cycle, the system will automatically default to the end of the cycle. So in this particular case, it's the Monday. So it defaults to the Monday date, and you can see that already the dashboard has updated. I want to get rid of the calendar box. I simply click just like I did, and you can see that the calendar has now disappeared to make it easier to view my screen. Now across here on the left-hand side, you can see that the summary shows every day of the cycle, and that this particular distributor has named each day. Now for some of you, you may see it simply as 1-1 Tuesday or 1-1 Thursday, depending on which day of the week that you start on, and you wouldn't have this additional commentary next to it. Now if you want to do that, you can use the CRM runs menu, and then you can see, you can rename the day, and then you would have these comments next to the day. Now, obviously the next two columns are where we've had some variances. So the workplaces is the number of active workplaces that you have on that particular day. So for this operator, for week 1, day 1, which is Tuesday, and he is in the Cannon Hill area, he has 30 workplaces to visit. On this particular cycle, it shows that he's done 24 visits. Now, if you were out on the road, the likelihood is that you would have visited all of your customers, and I know that a number of you have been querying the visit total, so that you're saying that you have actually been visiting all of your customers, but the number isn't matching up. Now, we did identify that there was a bug, so if you sold something that was not on the pick list, so you were selling something over and above what you were expecting to be picking up, so additional titles, then the system wasn't counting that as a strike, so it wasn't counting it as a visit. So you'll recall that last week I introduced to you the FUD dashboard statistics report, which you could use for more accurate numbers. So you can see that that number will be corrected once we release the new dashboard, but in the meantime to run the FUD dashboard statistics report. Now I'm just going to unmute everybody to see if anybody has any questions around that. Okay, so I've just unmuted everybody. Is there any questions? No questions?
No, all good.
Let's bring the chat back. Okay, great. So I'll just mute everybody again. Okay, so you can see here the remainder of the dashboard is quite self-explanatory. Each of the headings indicates what it indicates below, and obviously you've got some running totals along the bottom. Now I mentioned just a few moments ago about the dashboard report. So if you choose to run that, that's one avenue for you to check your visit totals, or you can use the Workplace tab. If you click on the Workplaces, you can see here it brings up a list of all the workplaces that you have for each cycle. Now as you scroll through, you can see the information is appearing and that you've got pickups or nothing sold. If I scroll down and I find an example here, so TriCare Hostel, for example, it's got a dash here, but you can see quite clearly that they sold 1 unit for $12. Now the reason why it shows the dash here is for the exact reason that I was mentioning before. Whilst he visited the workplace, he didn't sell anything from the pickup list that was showing on his FUD. He either fulfilled a back order or received money for a credit outstanding, or when he was in the pickup list, he used the plus button and either scrolled across and used the flyer to select a title from, or he physically typed a title in and sold that. And that's where it's not striking on the dashboard summary. So you can always count these up to make sure that it matches. Obviously this is quite a difficult screen to work from if you're trying to scroll through and count things up. So you can use the lightning button up here. Now it's actually a circle with a zigzag arrow in it, but I refer to it as the lightning button. By pressing the lightning button, you get the pop-up that I showed you last week. So obviously if the pop-up doesn't appear, then up in the top right-hand corner, you may have a pop-up blocked message come up in red writing. You'd simply need to click on that and always enable pop-ups and re-click the button again. Once it pops up down here in the left-hand corner, you can click the downward arrow and select always open files of this type, and that way you'll save yourself a click. If I click on here now, you can see that my dashboard has now dropped itself into Excel, but I can't see all of the title of this workplace. So if I click in the top left-hand corner just up here, it selects the entire worksheet for me. If I then click in between two of the columns, now it doesn't matter which two columns you click on, as long as you click on the line between the two cells, so you get the double arrows there that you can see on the screen. Now if I do a double click, you can see that automatically the cells resize themselves so that I can see all of the letters or numbers that appear in the cell. Now it makes it much easier for me to view the information and either apply the sort function or the filter function to view. So I'm just going to unmute everybody. Okay, does anybody have any questions? So does everybody understand now why the dashboard doesn't necessarily match your pickup numbers and how you can verify them?
Yep.
Yep.
That's great news. Okay, so we might move on, so I'll just mute everybody. Okay, so why does the portal not match what is showing on my FUD? This is actually quite a simple sort of question with a simple answer. So basically you have to remember that your FUD is what's happening out on the road and includes all of your sales. So not only does it include your completed sales, but it also includes your prepaid sales. So that's where you've received the money but not yet supplied the title, commonly referred to as a prepaid back order. Where your portal, in particular your portal dashboard, will only refer to completed sales. So those are the sales that you're going to be physically invoiced for when your auto invoice is being generated. If you're wanting to actually look at a report that matches your FUD, you need to look at the FUD dashboard statistics report that I showed you last week. So if we just revisit that now briefly, it's under reports. daily sales reconciliation category, and we look at the FUD dashboard statistics there. And that provides you a summary. If you're wanting to look at it a little bit in more detail, so by workplace, then you would run the second report that's listed here, the FUD dashboard statistics by workplace report. Okay, so we'll just unmute everybody. Okay, so does anybody have any questions around why the portal doesn't match?
No questions here.
Okay, so just remembering with both of those two reports that I pointed out, that the sheet 2 provides you an explanation of each of the menu headers. Did anybody run that report following the webinar last week and understand it or have any queries around it while we're talking about it?
Yeah, I did, Michelle. It's Steve here.
Okay, what was your question there, Steve?
No, I just ran the report and had a look at it, and that it made a lot of sense.
Okay. So it made a lot of sense. You didn't have too much trouble with the quantity of columns on it?
Oh, there's a lot of columns there and everything like that, but at least with the report, it shows what each one's for, and it makes it a lot clearer and easier to understand and what each column is. So it was very informative.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, we're looking to change the dashboard to match this report, so it's great to hear that people are liking it. So thank you. Now we've just had a question there from Ian about why the stock numbers on the FUD don't match the portal, which is a great question. So I'm just going to mute everybody because it's a little bit of a long-winded answer, just so we can stop the background noise. So as I alluded to in last week's webinar, we had found that when you were creating a return on your FUD, for example, you're returning a quantity of 60, which made your FUD balance 0. It was going through to CMS, and obviously there your balance was 60 until it's booked off by your master. What was happening, CMS was then sending an alert back to your FUD to reduce your stock quantity by 60 when that return was booked off. So effectively then your FUD went to -60, but your portal stayed at 0. So when we did a FUD release a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was version 12, we fixed that exact scenario, so your stock balances were only reduced once on the FUD when your return was created. But what we didn't rectify was the balances that occurred as a result of that, because we also identified that we needed to look at some more fixes around that and simplify the process that was occurring in the back end of the system. So one of the developers here has been working extremely hard on simplifying the background and the tables associated with calculating the stock balances. So this week we will be doing a release. We're looking for it to be happening on Wednesday, and you'll all get messages from your masters about the release. And then once you've updated to the new release, we believe your stock balances will come into alignment with what your CMS portal is showing. And obviously the next part of today's session is showing you how to verify those balances. So I'll just unmute everybody. So Ian, does that answer your question? Yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you for that. Awesome to hear. We apologise that any inconvenience that you've been experiencing. I certainly understand how frustrating it has been, but it's obviously taken us some time to redesign the back end, so we do appreciate your patience. And obviously the next part of today's session will be quite helpful for you to understand the stock numbers and how we reach those numbers and why we say look at your portal for answers. So what I'm going to cover off now is your stock inquiry window, and then we'll run through the reports that you need to be looking at. So I'm just going to mute everybody. Okay, so again, we're going into stock and stock inquiry, and I'll just remove my search. So you can see there that when I logged in, I only had 3 titles on my screen. Now straight away I'm going, why have I only got 3 titles? And it was because in my search box I had a few letters there which were minimizing out other titles that didn't contain those letters. So by simply using the backspace button, I've now got everything again. Again, across the top you've got your menu header there of the stock inquiry and your little lightning bolt. So you can use this button to download everything that's in this window, just in exactly the same way that I showed you for the dashboard a moment ago. In this particular header across the top, you can see comments and locations. The location, if you click on the location, it will remove this location column from your screen. So what that means, if you didn't have a wide screen and you were struggling to see everything across the screen because your screen was little, then by hiding that location column, you'll see more across your screen. At the moment, you can see here the PID is being sorted by a numerical order by the upward arrow. If I wanted to sort it by the titles that were listed, I could change it by clicking on the arrows here on the right-hand side of the column. And you can see that by doing that, processing comes up and I've got a little blue arrow showing me that it's now sorted from the top of the list, so from the numeral 1 right down to the very last title that I've got, probably beginning with W. So across the top here, obviously you've got your pretty basic information, but if I want to drill down on a title and look at my stock balances, I can see that I've got available 82. But how did I come up with that 82? If I click on the title, you can see here my stock movements tab, which gives me an explanation. But if I just scroll up to the top briefly here for a moment to show you, you can see here I now can see the PID, I can see the original title that Head Office Australia gave it to me, so that's the Sydney office. And there you can see the warehouse title. So that's the title that my master has called it. Now often they will be the same, but sometimes they might be slightly different. So if a customer is ringing you with something off the website, you might need to double check it using this original title. You can also see the RRP, the price that I'm selling it for, and also the carton quantity. The next part of the screen is some filter dates. So again, if you want to change the dates, you can simply click on the date column. Now a trick here is obviously it's January 2001, but I'm wanting to look for a more recent period. So rather than clicking each arrow, which is extremely painful, if I click on the actual April 2001, it will bring me up a calendar month. So I could click on a calendar month for 2001, but I actually want to run it for this year. So I could then click on it again and it would bring me up some parameters for years, and then I could simply arrow forward to the period that I wanted to run it for. Click on the year, then I could click on the month, then I could click on the day. And then the box below will now show me dates from that date until today, because that's the end date that's been set. Now if I scroll up to the top of the list here, you can see the stock movements tab, and the stock movements basically shows me all physical movements with the stock. So you can see here on the 25th of August I was issued stock, and it gave me a closing balance of 160 units. As I sell each unit or return it or receive more issues, then a line will appear here. You can see this first line is that I've sold a unit. It's got a -1 because it's reduced my stock balance, how much I've sold it for, and what my closing balance is. So as I scroll down through the list, you can see that my balance is slowly reducing until you get to the very bottom, and I can see that my closing balance is 82, which is what's reflected on the front screen. Now the next tab, which I find extremely useful and which some of you may not be quite as familiar with, is the sales and billing tab. Now the reason why we've introduced this tab is because obviously you get issued stock and then during the week you sell it, which reduces your closing balance, but it doesn't update the master's balance for what you're liable for until you've had your invoice generated. So at any one point in time, often your stock balance is much lower than what the masters believe you're responsible for because there's still items to be billed. So therefore they appear in the sales and billing tab. So as you can see here, what happens with the sales and billing tab is that it looks extremely like the stock movements tab. However, it does work in the opposite way. So obviously as you make a sale, so that's that first sale that we were just looking at for the Seven Hills State School, you can see now that the quantity is a positive quantity, and that's because you now need to be billed for 1 unit. So you can see as you've made sales throughout the rest of the week, that balance now increases. However, as you can see, on the 11th of September there's a billed stock description. Now that refers to your auto invoice that's been generated by your master. And you can see that it's got a -28. So that reduces your balance to 0. So up until the day end on the 11th of September, you were due to be billed for 28 units. So they were the units that you had sold during that period out on the road to your workplaces. By having the billed stock, it reduces that outstanding billed balance to 28 by 28 units, so it gives you the closing balance of 0. And then if you were to scroll further down, you could see that it then increases again. So I'm just going to unmute everybody. Okay, does anybody have any questions around that?
I haven't got a question, but it was very informative.
That's great. Did you learn something new?
I sure did, a lot. I knew nothing about those.
That's the purpose of these webinars. It's great to hear that people are learning.
Is it something you've been looking for, or?
No, not really. Who's talking?
I'm not sure. You guys might need
feel free
to
to say who it is when you're talking.
Oh, John Crean. Yeah, I hadn't been. I just didn't understand it at all, and just seeing that what you've just shown us then has just clarified so much that I didn't know.
That's great to hear. I mean, obviously, John, it's, you've been on the portal for a little while now, and I haven't been back up to visit Central Coast for a little while, and I'm actually popping up there next week. So I definitely will be covering some of these things off with Nathan so that at your next meeting it can be covered. But you'll also get a copy of the recording so that you can revisit it. And whilst it is something that is briefly covered at the training weekend, there's so much to take on at that weekend. You kind of take on what you need to know for the next few days. So it's great to hear that you're benefiting from these webinars.
Yeah, no, they're good.
Yeah. So Jodie's just asked the question, why is the rate different on some of the lines? Well, in this particular case, that distributor may have received or given different discounts to different operators. So obviously that's the rate that they've sold to that customer through the phone. Generally speaking, it would be the same rate for every single workplace, because obviously you generally don't charge different workplaces different amounts, but this particular distributor, I can see at a quick glance that they offer discounts to their customers. That doesn't mean that that discount gets passed on to your invoice, of course.
Michelle, Kerry from Ipswich, what does the reference refer to? What's the number referring to, like 463101 up the top?
If I click on sale here, it refers to the back-end number that this receipt is issued. So I can see up here in the URL that that is the number there. It may also, and I can't confirm right at this minute, it may also refer to the receipt number if a receipt was to be physically issued to the customer.
Okay, so it's not an issue number or anything like that?
No, that's the number associated with the sale on that billing tab.
Oh, okay. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. No problem. Check these no more questions. Okay, great. So what we'll do now is we'll look at some of the reports. So I'll just mute everybody. Okay, so obviously we've shown you the stock inquiry window with the stock movements and the sales billing tab, but for some of you, you may find that that is quite painful to work through on a stock item title by title basis. So there's also some reports that you can look at, and I'm just going to work through in the order that they're on the menu for ease of just making sure we cover them off. So if I go to the reports tab and I look at the stock reports category, I can see that there's some reports listed there. Now the first report, the distributor issued stock aging report by title. So I'm just going to run that report. Now if I had franchisee, if I had subcontractors, again I can click on it and drill down. In this particular report you have to run in Excel. And the reason for that is the volume of columns across it. It doesn't particularly work well in Excel. Now just following on from last week where I indicated about the pop-up, so obviously if you're running a report and it doesn't appear, remember your pop-up up in the top right hand corner and your down arrow to ensure they always open. So if I open this particular report now, just make it a little bit bigger on the screen for you, so hopefully you can see that. So I'm just looking down here, I've got some negatives which obviously need to be sorted. And now that I can see I'm looking at rolled down, which the closing balance is 109. But it's really annoying here because I've lost my title, which tells me what column this is across the top. So to fix that, I'm just going to scroll back up to the top and click on the Enable Editing button up the top here. And what that does is it means now that I can move things around in the spreadsheet and make some alterations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click in a row beneath the header that I want and beside the column that I want to stay. So I'm just going to click in that closing balance column. Now if I go to the View header across the top and I click on the split window just up here, it's already highlighted, but if I click on it, it unhighlights it. And then I click on Freeze Panes. And then I click on Freeze Panes again. Now by doing that, you can see now that when I scroll down, my headers stay locked. So as my headers stay locked, it means that now I can look at rolled down and I can see the closing balance of 109, and I can see that that stock is 3 weeks old. So as I scroll down, I can see some other titles that are beginning to appear and that they're getting slightly older as I work my way down. So obviously this report is particularly useful for making sure that you're keeping your returns in check so that you're not going to get a keep stock invoice or a return request from your master. Now I would just like to point out this particular row here, the roadside and auto emergency kit. You can see here the closing balance is 9, but it's made up of 6 units that were issued to me 6 weeks ago and 3 units that were issued to me 11 weeks ago. Now, I guess you're sitting there going, why would I have been issued stock 6 weeks ago when I still had stock from 11 weeks ago? Well, it is quite possible that those 3 units were supplied to a customer, but you've had to put them on credit and they haven't paid you for them yet. So this report obviously clearly indicates that you have some old stock there and potentially some old credits there that you need to deal with too. Or it might purely be that your master had topped you up and that was the reason why you've had 2 split issues over a certain period of time. So I'm just going to unmute everybody.
It should be a real credit report.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions around that report?
No, Steve here. No, all good.
Great, that's awesome. Okay, don't forget to use the chat box, guys, if you've got.
No questions, but I love the freeze panes. That's going to help me a lot. Thank you.
Great. See, this is awesome. Everybody's learning something slightly different. If they take one new thing away from the session, my goal's been achieved for the night. So I'm just going to minimize this report and we're going to look at a different report. So I'm just going to mute everybody. Okay, so we're going to look at the next report. My mouse sorted. So reports, stock report, and the distributed stock balances report. Now this particular report is best that you run it in Excel. So even though you've got the PDF format there, I strongly advise you to run it in the Excel format. You click OK. Again, you get the pop-up in the left-hand corner, and if it's a different format, remembering the downward arrow. So once it's finished downloading, I then can click on it, and I'll just make it a little bit bigger for you. So this particular report here gives you a complete summary for all transactions that relate to a particular title. So across the top there, you've obviously got the current stock balance for today, and you've got a notation there that the total sales includes invoiced, lost, and free stock. So that includes the lost items that you have confirmed. So definitely not pending because you haven't been billed for them, but just the invoiced ones. So that's why what total sales includes. So across here you can see the 10-piece balloon set that we were looking at before. That the sale price, the last sale price that was issued to me, it was $8. The carton quantity is 160, and I've had a total unit issued to me of 160. I've returned no units. I've made 75 sales, or I've been, invoiced 75 units, and that means my opening balance is $85. So my opening balance at the 12th of October, so today, is 85 units. You can see out to the side there, out to the right, from columns I/J right through to P, that there's some further information there for you. The sold but not yet billed column would indicate where I've made a sale, but my invoice hasn't been generated yet. So that would reflect or match your sales billing tab that we just covered off. The supplied but not yet paid for, so what that means is those titles are on credit. So that clearly indicates that there's 3 balloons that I've supplied, so they've reduced my stock balance, but I haven't yet received the money for them, so therefore I haven't been billed for them. I've got 72 units that must be in my van or garage, because there's also 10 units out at a workplace. So those 10 units come from the FUD information, and they reflect what you're entering into your FUD. So if you've got a column there that looks completely wrong, then you must have dropped off some titles at workplaces inadvertently on your FUD, but not obviously physically. The last couple of columns there will relate depending on how you're set up with your particular master. So I know, for example, for Queensland, that some of the franchisees have to accept their stock in, so that the master sends the stock to them and then they confirm the receipt of it. So that's why you would have transit in appearing. Where most masters, I think South Australia and Queensland are the only masters that allow that because of the implication it has on stock balances. Most masters now send the stock directly to the stock balances, and then the franchisee would notify of any differences. And if you are manually accepting the stock, it might be something you wish to address with your master on an individual basis to have it forced to your stock balance, because it certainly makes reconciling your stock much easier, and it means that everything stays in check and it's easy to see what's going on. The transit out column relates to your returns. So that's where you've issued returns back to your master, but they haven't yet booked it off. So they haven't physically received it into their warehouse and counted it. The pending lost column obviously indicates items that you've marked on your FUD as pending lost, but they haven't yet been confirmed. So I'll just ask if anybody's got questions. So does anybody have any questions on that?
Steve here, Michelle. I do have a question re the pending loss, but I've got it for our meeting on Saturday, so I'll leave it till then.
Okay, no problem. So, Jodie, just to answer your question is, you can see here that I'm running the report for a Queensland person, and they've got transit in column. So I know that some distributors are still accepting their stock manually, and it may purely be based on location because it takes 2 or 3 days to get the stock to them. So Narelle's just asked the question, when you're paying for age stock, is the report we just looked at the true balances to go from? Yeah, that report obviously indicates to you how old your stock is. So you will be being billed for stock that's probably 11 weeks. So you could certainly use that report to validate the invoice. If you're a little bit uncertain, you could always use the stock movements tab and look at when that stock was issued to you to get the age as well on an individual basis. That way you could look at the transactions according to it and figure out why you're being billed for it if you think you've got a zero stock balance. Does that answer your question, Narelle? Okay, so what we might do now is just move on to the next report. So I'm just going to mute everybody. So I'm just going to close these 2 reports that I've got up here. Now, the last report that I'd like to show you this evening is again under stock reports, but the distributed T-screen report. Now, I know a number of you have been asking for this report, and so we are looking at going to put a little T on the stock inquiry window so you can access it directly from there. But in the meantime, we've introduced it onto the report menu so that you can run it and look at your stock reports. So if I run it, the trick here is that I need to know the PID for the particular product that I'd like to look at. So I'm just going to have a look at that same one we looked at a moment ago. So it was the 10-piece balloon set. So I can see here at the top, I just put in 10p and it's automatically brought up the titles with just those matching letters in it. So I can see my PID just here on the left-hand side is 24775. So if I put into the PID box 24775, the report will now run for that particular title. Now, to be sure that I encapsulate all of the information, I'm going to run the report back from the beginning of the year. So just in case that was a bit quick, I clicked on the date up the top, which gave me the month, and then I clicked on January, and then I clicked on the 1st. Now this particular report is quite handy to run in PDF format, so you can see the radio button has already been selected, so all I need to do is click OK. So if I click here on the PDF, now again, because this is a different format, you may have your pop-up blocked, so just bear in mind of that, and the downward arrow always open to avoid a step for you. So if I click on that here, you can now see my T-screen report. So I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger to make it easier for you to open, for you to see. And you can see across the top it's got some summary information, the PID, the total, the date period that I picked it from, and also my closing balance, which is made up of my issues, less any returns, less any invoices. You can see here the issue number, the date that it was issued to me, and the quantity, and a total balance here of issues. In this particular example, I've returned no units, and finally here you can see the invoice quantities. I'm just going to unmute everybody. So does anybody have any questions around that?
No, that looks good, Steve, again. That looks good. It's similar to the tracking report that we had on the old system.
It is very much so. It should almost be identical. Obviously in a slightly different format, being a PDF, and it's not in the boxes, but that was the purpose of this report, to encapsulate the T-screen report.
No, it looks good.
Okay, that's great. I'm just going to mute everybody. There's been a couple of questions that pop up. Okay, so one of the questions that has been popped up is in regards to credit. So I'm just going to go back to the stock inquiry, and I can look here and see across the title that obviously I've got some quantities here, the available, allocated, transit in, transit out, the warehouse, but there's nothing there to indicate to me about what stock I've got out on credit. So the best way to look at that is to look at the reports and then to look at the debtor reports. And here I can look and see the distributed credit sales listing report on the menu. Now if I run this particular report, I'm just going to run it in Excel because that's what I normally run it in personally. And I select OK. I click on the pop-up in the bottom left-hand corner. I can see here, I'll just make it a little bit bigger for you. I can see here the workplace, the contact name, the quantity of units, and how much is on credit and what date that was, and also the title it relates to. So here I can see if there's a variance between the stock that my closing balance shows me and what I'm being billed for is probably because I may have items on credit. So if I can run this report, then I can compare and make sure that I am being billed correctly. It's also a great report for looking to see how much money is outstanding, because quite clearly here you can see at SmartCom that I've got a credit outstanding from July. Now quite possibly I may have been billed for that item, so I personally am now carrying that ownership of that debt for that customer. So it's important that you do check on that, because obviously seeing the dollar sign on your FUD doesn't tell you how long that debt has been outstanding for, although pressing the dollar sign on your dashboard does show you that. So hopefully that covers off that question. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, so is there a way? Hi, who's that?
Catherine. I wasn't able to make the last webinar. I have a lot of credits on my FUD, but I put the sales through. It was when I started. I started at Christmas time last year, so I have a lot of credits.
Sure, so obviously that was something we definitely covered at last week's session. So I suggest what you do is get in touch with your master. They received a recording of the webinar, so they will be able to forward it on to you so that you can watch it in your own time, and it will step you through how to delete a credit on your FUD.
Thank you.
No problems. It's a two-step process, so I do suggest that you watch the video and then take, one evening without a glass of wine and without screaming children and sit and process it all so you don't muck it up.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. So there's another question there. Is there a way to see all outstanding stock issued prior to a particular date? So again, you would be running the age date report that would show you stock aged by weeks, and that would be the easiest way to view that information. There's also, could we get a number of customers visited with this? So Ian, I'm sorry, which report are you referring to? Sorry, you will have to use the chat box. I can't hear you. I know you're talking to me though.
Oh, well, there's a lot of different reports and that, so it might be very helpful for us, hopefully. Yeah, obviously it finishes at 2.
So we're talking about the distributed credit sales report then. Or are you asking about the T3 report? the T-screen report. Okay. Hanu, can you answer that? You want the number of customers on the T-screen report. Was that something that was on HBC?
Relate to the number of transactions.
So on this particular report here, you're wanting to know the number of customers visited with this.
Is that real? If you
So this report's been designed for stock reconciliation. Our understanding was it matched HBC, although I never used HBC. How does everybody else feel about that? Is that relevant for the purpose of this report?
I don't think it's relevant because the sales to distributor shows the quantity that you get invoiced for each week, and the issue is what you're issued from at the start. The returns are what you return to the master, and the sales to distributor are what you've sold to individual customers each week, and therefore you've got another report there that you can go and look at for your individual sales to your own individual customers. Whereas this report is to deal with what you have dealings between yourself and your master, whereas other reports are what you do between yourself and your customers.
Yeah, I know. I tend to agree with you, Steve. Thank you for that. And Joe Sultana is in agreement as well. So it might be that we need to look at another type of a report to cover that information for you, Ian, and maybe you'd like to email me using BGD support at Bridge 2 to cover that off. So basically, guys, that concludes this evening's webinar. I'd just like to thank you all for your attendance once again. It's great to have more people on, so the newbies, as I refer to them, on the webinar this evening, but also to have some of the same people that were on the webinar last week. And once again, I do hope that you received, you learned one thing, hopefully more than one thing out of today's session. And if you have any questions, don't forget BGD support at bridge2.co.nz. And if you do want any other webinar topics, just to let us know, and that we'll look at having some more. We are conscious of the fact that we are heading into Christmas, and getting you know, an hour's time to sit in front of the computer can be quite difficult. So if you have any other ideas around timing, please feel free to send that feedback through as well. The reason they've been held on Monday evenings is the feedback we received from the FAC members, but certainly open to other evenings or other timings, whether it be earlier in the day. We just bear in mind that at the moment it's 9:30 at night here in New Zealand. So once again, thank you for attendance. Have a great evening, and for the New South Wales, Central Coast and Brisbane guys, I guess I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Well done.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Very good.
See you later.
Thanks,
Thanks, Michelle.
Mate.
Great stuff.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.